Hello and welcome to The Mariner with me, Chris Stanmore-Major. Well, this week I've got a new section for you. I think it's going to become a very regular part of what's going on, and I hope you like and appreciate the way that I've set this up. What I'm going to do is here on YouTube we're going to have this section called the Forecastle. The Forecastle is where you go to learn things. So says the Ashley Book of Knots. In his 1946 publication, he's explaining to the reader why there has been no real compendium of knots in this way before, and he says very clearly, professional seafarers just go to the forecastle to learn everything they need to know. So I'm hoping that's what this is going to be. Sailing I find still interesting and still inspiring after so many years being involved in it. It's amazing because it's got this 5,000-year history right back to the Egyptians and the Chinese that we can chart things through. People were putting vegetable fiber lines like this piece of manila together and crossing oceans thousands of years ago, and we are connected to that, and they have already answered so many of the questions that we have, and they've come up with lovely, elegant methods of answering these things. You know when you're getting your seamanship right because it's effortless, you're not sweating, and it all just works out perfectly. So I am hoping to present that to you. This would be running alongside being out on the water and getting more experience and learning your own boat and doing paper qualifications that allow you to be both legal and safe and knowledgeable on the water. This is like the mortar that goes between those bricks, the mortar that I find missing on many of the sailors that I interact with. This week we're going to be looking at the bowline. We're going to be starting there, and we're going to be looking in this section at the lightning bowling, which is a really fun way of winning a bet in a pub and get yourself a beer in the pub. It's also a fantastic way of saving the day when you come into the marina, things are going wrong, the wind's blowing, the engine's stuck in reverse, whatever it is, and you need to save the day by getting that line around the dolphin quickly or through the ring quickly. It can really earn you beer as well as win you beer. So, can you tie a bowline in 1 second? Find out how now. Okay, well, I've come over to this post in the barn, very authentic place to show you what's going on. This is exactly the situation that you get into with a boat. You're coming into a marina, you've got a dolphin post or something that you need to get a line around. It's key to what's going on, and you know, man on the bow, woman at the stern, whatever it is, your job, if it doesn't happen, there's going to be a lot of screaming and shouting, and there's going to be a big bill. So you want to ace this if you possibly can. Now, obviously, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to get your arms around the post, which is probably going to be larger diameter than this, and you're going to have to get your arms around and then start to make up a bowline. But what inevitably happens is you start getting further and further away. As the bowline starts getting done, you've got something like this, and that's not good for anything. So what we want to do is we want to create a situation whereby you can come in and get the bowline cast around the dolphin or the post or whatever it is as fast as possible. This would also work if you had a ring hanging down off a wharf or something. You could do the same thing. So instead of trying getting our arms around and then tying the knot, we can start to make up a little jig here, a little kind of setup, which is going to make things a lot easier for us. There's a trick with bowlines. Let's do it in reverse first. If I take a bowline, I make her up, and what we can do with a bowline is if we get hold of these two bits, the tail and the side of the bowline loop that it comes closest to, and we pull that and we straighten it up, we can create on the opposite side a little shape. Okay, we have capsized this part out of the knot, so we put that back in, we pull everything back together again, and then voila, a bit of a wiggle and jiggle, we've got a bowline again. So we're using that trick to our advantage. Now we don't want to be having to take bowlines apart to do it. So what we do is, here we got the standing part of the line, downstream from this is your boat, and then we got the bitter end here, and this area is going to be the loop. We take and lay on top a little overhand loop. It doesn't matter if it's on the inside or the outside or however you want to do it. We put a little one inside, and then we take a part of the standing line and we go through. Now, if you know how to tie a bowline, which you should by now, there's only one way you can do this. Obviously, if you go up from underneath, it's all just going to fall into nothing. So whichever is the direction you make your loop up, it needs to be such a way that when it's made, it's stable. You've got an overhand loop capturing a bite of the standing part of the line. Now, I know from the way this works, I'm right-handed, and so this little setup needs to be in my left hand, but the standing part of the line needs to be over the crook of my right elbow, and I'll show you why that is in just a second. So I come to the post. It's a very slender post, so I've got a very small loop here. I put the line around, and I go through this loop that we created. I then come onto the back side of the post, and then voila, we pull, and we got ourselves a little bowline. Don't worry, we're going to go through it nice and carefully. Okay, so let's see what's happening. To make up the little setup, we do an overhand knot, and then we put a loop through it, okay? What's called a tom-thumb knot. This guy goes into the offhand. If you're left-handed, this is going to be on your right side. We put the standing part of the line over the crook of our elbow. I'll show you why just now. And we take the bitter end in our primary hand. We pass it round the back. We go through this part of the rope. Now you can see I'm dealing with the two lines here, but I haven't dropped the standing part of the line. If you haven't got it over the crook of your arm, as you come through here and do this part of it, you're going to have to then look for this, which as the boat's moving, this may well be over the side of the boat. So keep this on top of your arm here. Now, as we made this up earlier, this, when it's inside the knot, this part of it, it's going to have to be doubled back. That's where it's going to have to end up, doubled back like that. So as we start to pull it in, if we pull only on the standing part, only on the primary part of the knot, you won't be able to pull this part through the knot. It won't go. So at the last second, you need to throw this one away, which then allows this to pop it through, boom, and then you've got a bowline, okay? So one more time. Make a tom-thumb knot, put it into your offhand. If it's a bigger piling, you can just throw this guy right around it and then catch it through. Be careful with your hand being through here. If something goes wrong, this gets caught in a splinter, the boat keeps moving, you're in problems. So be very careful about reaching through. We take this guy, we throw it around, and then at the last moment we throw the bitter end away and pull through on the other one. That, if anything, is where the risk is. The risk is in the fact that you have to throw it away. If you don't throw it away, what you're going to end up with is that semi-capsized bowline with you holding on to what is then a kind of slip knot. If you're not lucky, it's just going to start sliding and sliding and sliding, and your boat's going to disappear into whatever you're trying to avoid. So at the last moment, this guy gets thrown away, and then in goes the bowline. Okay, there's the lightning method. Okay, well, I hope that was useful. There's still loads to be learned beyond the lightning bowline. I gotta say, that's been very, very helpful to me on a number of occasions, particularly solo. You're coming into a port, you want to get something around a post really quickly. You haven't got time to be messing around trying to fiddle a bowline in. Having that already set up on the deck and then just stick them around, very, very useful. I would say practice it a lot, and I wouldn't necessarily rely on it all the time, because in the end, when your hand is through that loop ready to grab, in the end you're going to catch yourself. And if you're at such a point where your skill set is relying on something so touch and go, so dynamic, you're pushing things towards the edge. In the end, there's going to be some kind of collision or damage. So use it as it's meant to be, which is it's a fun trick. It's a great way to win a beer in a bar. Can you tie a bowline in 1 second? And it's there in case you need it at the bottom of your toolbox, like a big hammer, in case you just have to get that line around the post. There's still some other things to learn. We've still got things like the flying bowline, which we can show you how to do that. A bit of a messy one. For those that want to deep dive, go further, learn more, follow me over to Patreon, and there I've prepared a 35-minute video which is much, much more about the bowline. To give you an idea what's going to be in that, yeah, bowline started in vegetable fiber lines thousands of years ago. The knot itself is very much based on being able to provide friction and compression onto a line, whereby the strength of the line is in the components that that friction is acting upon. To explain further, in a 3-strand line, the friction is on the strands, and the strands are the strength. But if we put a bowline into a modern kernmantel style line, a double braided line, you're dealing with something completely different. This 13mm line has a breaking strain of 8,800 kilos, but if I form a bowline in it, the bowline is imparting its friction and its compression to the sheath of the rope. The sheath of the rope is made of polyester in this case, and it accounts for about 10 to 15% of the strength of the line. So when that friction starts to hold the bowline together and the load starts to build on the line and build on the line, can this knot actually hold 75% of the rated breaking strain of this line? No, it can't. It can only hold a percentage of the sheath's breaking strain. And I can tell you right now, without going into too much detail of what's on Patreon, I've seen these break out under repeated and repeatable testing on a hydraulic draw in a rope maker's workshop, and this bowline will break out at 1.5 tons on a line which breaks, the core breaks at 8,800 kilos. So the bowline, you need to understand how it's made. Now the bowline also has lots of variations. There's the double bowline, there's the water bowline, there's the Yosemite finish, there's the flying bowline, the dragon bowline, the lightning bowline, the Portuguese bowline, the cowboy bowline. Like, there's quite a lot of bowlines, so we're going to get into them. What are they for? How can you use them? How can you tie them faster, more reliably? And how can you use the bowline to its very best advantage? That's what the Patreon area is for. So if you're interested in that, follow me over. And the cost over there is going to be about a beer's worth. Okay, so thanks very much. If you want to ring the bell below, that really is the only way on YouTube now that we have of being able to communicate directly. And if I'm able to continue doing this on a day-to-day basis, that means you have access to my knowledge, and then we're all happy. Okay, so see you in the forecastle next time. Cheers.